I'm Michael Bitar, partner at Protis Global.
I'm Cristina Sacco, VP of Marketing at Protis Global. So we've seen a lot of transition in the marketplace today. And one of the questions that we had was, when do you know when to bring in a new team, like getting the old band back together versus keeping the existing team that's in place? Like, how does an executive evaluate that?
It's a great question, Christina, and we see this going on a ton in the marketplace, not just right now, but it's constant, right? It's constantly happening. Companies are evolving and ebbing and flowing, and so you see this at the top of the house, at the CEO level. You see this at the functional leadership levels within the division. So it happens throughout organizations, and I think the question that you just put on the table is a really important one, because just like most things in life, there's a balance, and we struggle to figure out what the right balance is, and it's not always consistent from one situation to the next. So from what we've seen and the leaders that we've talked to on their approach with this, it varies a little bit, but I think a couple of core competencies or core fundamentals that we've seen is that most leaders that have been in business for some period of time, and it doesn't have to be 20 plus years, but maybe, 3, 4, 5 plus in leadership roles, have a pretty good idea of what their individual strengths and their individual opportunities are. And where we've seen a lot of consistency in the fact that when, they know that they may be, I'm making this up, they may be a little bit light in finance. They've got this CFO or controller or VP of finance or FP&A that is their go-to person. And so they know when they move into that next role, there may be a star in that role, but they've got this person that they know interacts with them really well, and that's a kind of a core gap that they have, and for their comfort level, they're bringing that person along with them. But I think the best leaders really go into those situations with a pretty open mind, meaning there's a team in place, and that team has had some level of success. They may be going through a transition, they may be difficulties, but there's been some level of success, and it takes a period of time to assess what truly is happening. There's only so much you can figure out in an interview process. Now you're in the organization. Now you've either maybe moved from a division to something else, and the assessment of that existing team needs to take a period of time. Even if the existing team may not be the right players in the new leader's mind, he or she still has to evaluate the people that they know from before. Do they fit this new organization that they just came to? So it's not just functional, it's also cultural.
Sure. And sometimes you have the option of bringing somebody in new, which can give you a fresh perspective. They might come from a different industry. That all lends itself to innovation because you have this diversity of thought. When do they decide when you bring somebody in new versus when you use the existing team? How is that going to affect the dynamic?
Yeah, and again, there's not a magic answer to this, but what I think the really transformational leaders have done is that when they come in, they identify what needs to happen in this organization. What results do we need to be able to achieve? What are the core fundamentals of the culture that are in place? How do we need to evolve that? Every time you add or take away an individual, I don't care how big or small the organization is, every time you add or take away an individual, the culture evolves in some way, shape, or form. Positively, maybe negatively, maybe just different direction. So once the leader has got a really good idea on what he or she and the team needs to get done on both sides of those components, now you can start to evaluate who you're going to add to the organization and who in the current organization may be in the right seat or may need to move to a different seat or no longer is needed on the bus, quite frankly. And I think the sooner that the leader is able to do those pieces, then he or she is able to then go outside to their network and bring in the right fit, both on both sides of that equation, and then also put together a clear path for those that are already in the company to say, hey, here's where we're going. Here's the cool things that you've already done in this organization, and here's the vision that I have for the company, or we have for the company, and for your career pathing within that. When you're able to combine both of those components, now the team that you inherit, the team that you're trying to bring in, they're all going, okay, your path, your direction, or our path, our direction is clear. I want to be part of that. I want to stay here. I want to join. That's, that's what the great leaders do. They've got a vision. They clearly articulate it, and then people want to be part of that, and they're kind of knocking each other over to be on the team.
Right. And so you talked about the executive. They come in, they evaluate the situation. They decide, hey, I've got this superstar I want to bring in because I see these gaps. They've evaluated the existing team, but what about the existing team? What can they do? What's the best advice that you have for them to now interact with this new leader, this new executive? How do they stay relevant?
No, and I think it's a great question. And I think too many times when people get a new leader, whether that person comes from outside or even just an internal promotion or just internal movement, they immediately get anxious, right? And there's a new leader, there's change. And I think the best advice for individuals as you're managing your career, to not think about your career management of an external move. You've got to think about your career management from internal movements that make sense as well. And so the fundamental way that we talk to talent every day is to have a scorecard. Personally, professionally, and financially, what is it that you're trying to get done? Not what are you going to put together in a goal sheet that's going to impress others, but what's really important to you and your family. And that's it, I mean, truly. But have to be really, really honest with themselves. So I'm answering your question talking about a personal, professional, and financial scorecard because I think that's how people really can manage change, and not just their career and an external move, but changes that are going on inside of their organization. Do they want to continue to be a part of them? How do they see themselves not only gaining experiences, but adding value to the new entity or to the changed entity or to the new leader or to the person that's just moved in from a different division inside of the organization? So that approach puts you in a position to be able to say, you know what, there are a couple core components that I'm really looking for if I'm going to stay, or a couple core components that I'm going to be looking for if I'm now decided that I'm going to exit, and what a new organization's got to be able to bring to that individual to make them, fulfilled as a human being, not just as a professional.
Right. Those are great points. Thank you so much.